into the time where I took flame and platinum in New York for the first time. So you know how I do, man. Just follow the story. So, around this time, man, the rapper Max B was coming home, you know what I mean? And in New York, you know what I mean, that was a big deal, you know what I mean? Most of y'all from the South and other places might not have cared, but in New York, Max B coming home from jail was a big deal, you know what I mean? So, I knew they had certain dames lined up, for Max B, you know what I mean? And I wanted to go to certain events. So I figured, not only I get to, go to, like a luncheon that Max B was having, but he was also performing, you know what I mean? He was performing at Brooklyn Paramount, you know what I mean? That's where he was going to be performing at Brooklyn Paramount. So I hit up my cousin Buddha because, my cousin Buddha at this time was still shooting for Hood Affairs DVD and all that shit, But, it wasn't like DVDs no more. They was just doing straight content, for their YouTube channel and their website. So I hit up my cousin. I'm like, yo, I know you're going to be at the jail where Max B gets released. You know what I mean? Let me know what's up with the luncheon and all that shit and the tickets to get to the show. You know what I mean? Because, my cousin was part of the, like the team that's going to be filming, behind the scenes footage of Max B coming home from jail and following him, to the studio and basically his journey back into society. So my cousin, like, no doubt. So I hit him up probably like a month before Max B was coming home. Max B was released from prison November 9th, you know what I mean? That was on a Sunday and shit. So, so I hit him up a month prior, so of course Max B comes home November 9th. So prior to that, me, Platinum, and Flame, you know what I mean? We made arrangements to come to New York. So boom, we fly to New York. So of course we fly to New York. So soon as we touched down in New York, I had my cousin, you know what I mean, my cousin Shaq Capone, you know what I mean, pick us up from the airport, you know what I mean. Not only, to bring me, you know what I mean, some heat so that way, we good out in New York. But, he was, gave me one of his cars, so he picked us up, then took us to his crib. We took the Dodge Charger because I wanted to be low-key, moving through New York and shit, so we took Dodge Charger and we head up to the city to get the Airbnb. And that's where, me, Platinum, and Flame, chilled out, and, so not only, we got some, heat with us in case we come across some beef, but, we got a little car to move around. Plus we chilling in the Airbnb, Now by this time, Max B, then came home, there's footage, which my cousin, was filming, him to going to the studio, shopping, shit like that. So, he had this luncheon coming up to it. Not only it was a luncheon, but it also was like an engagement party, which I found out later on. So, of course, me, Platinum, and Flame, we went shopping prior. We went to Daniel's Leather, copped a few leathers, shit like that. I wanted to be fly, So, of course, I'm dipped out, Platinum and Flame, they dipped out, so we get in and shit, because, my cousin gave us passes, to get in, So we get in, Dave East was there, I met, Dave East and shit. Few other people was there, Pat wall, got to meet Max B. And the first time when I met Max B, I said, what up, twin, motherfuckers always tell me I look like you and shit, Max B laughed, that's, that, how he laughed, he said, you're like, oh shit, you do look like me. So we done took pictures together and shit at the party, and I'm telling him, welcome home, man, pound hug, I'm like, welcome home. We like, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I saw French Montana, shook hands with French because I knew French through Diddy. Back when, I was doing like, security and doing the free calls for Diddy and Cassie and all that shit. So, I knew French. I'm like, yo, and then, me and French was kind of bugging how, Diddy locked up right now and all that shit he going through. You know what I mean? Free Diddy, by the way. You know what I mean? So, all that. So, so of course, during the luncheon, everybody's mingling, networking. Max B, you know what I mean? He pulls out a ring and he proposed to his girl, you know what I mean? He proposed to his girl and shit, you know what I mean? Of course, we all, happy for Max B, celebrating for Max B, you know what I mean? That, he proposed to his girl, you know what I mean? So everybody just vibing, you know what I mean, at the luncheon. So as, I'm chilling, me, Platinum Flame, I see this nigga, Hassan Campbell, the vlogger, that be on YouTube, that's from New York, he from the Bronx. Now, around this time recently, Hassan Campbell said some slick shit about, about Queens niggas, and I'm from Queens. And he said something about Prince, from the Supreme Team, you know what I mean, who recently came home and shit. He said something about, Prince, you know what I mean. Now, you know me, I grew up in Basic Projects where Prince and Supreme and all them niggas hustled at, you know what I mean. But what bothered me, what he said was, he said Queens niggas, it's only tough in Queens, like trying to say like niggas in Queens is pussy outside of Queens. I took offense to that, so I go up to Hassan Camera, I'm like, yo, what up, player? And he like, what up? So we talking, I'm like, yeah, I'm from Queens, you know what I mean? I'm from Southside, from Basic Projects. I kind of got a problem with what you said about, Queens niggas only being tough in Queens. Like, what you mean by that? Like, you know what I mean? Because growing up in Queens, I ain't never see, no Bronx nigga where you come from to come to Queens and take over nothing. So how you gonna say we only tough in Queens? If that's the case, why y'all never mind niggas like, Queens or Brooklyn niggas ever came to, Queens and, of course he got offended. Started getting loud. I started getting loud, so now we arguing. We going back and forth, you know what I mean? Me and Hassan Campbell, we arguing back and forth. So Platinum and Flame, they step up behind me. So it's like, yo, what's up? So I'm like, yo, what's good? You know what I mean? What you want to do? So, you know what I mean? So, we going back and forth, back and forth. Niggas calm it down. So, I guess, Hassan, he's still, all that rah-rah shit, but that shit ain't scaring nobody. I'm like, whatever. So, I guess Hassan, he decides to leave with him and his crew. So they leave and shit. So, once they left, we chill for like another half hour after luncheon and shit. So Platinum and Flame, they was ready to go. You know what I mean? So I'm like, alright, I wasn't worried about, Hassan waiting for me outside, because I had that thing on me, that I got from my cousin prior, my cousin, my cousin Shaq Capone, made sure I had that thing on me, you know what I'm saying? So, when we get out, out to luncheon, you know what I mean? Of course, Hassan wasn't there. Alright, cool, you know what I mean? So, it's late and shit, you know what I mean? It's still, dark, you know what I mean? At night, you know what I mean? So we about to head to the Airbnb, to the city in Manhattan and shit, right? I'm riding, I'm driving and shit. You know what I'm saying? I noticed, you know what I mean? Nigga Hassan is live and shit. So, I'm looking, you know what I mean? Something told me to click on a notification, because even though, he said that slick shit about Queens, I follow Hassan on YouTube. And when I notice he's live, you know what I mean? And, he's screaming and hollering about, motherfuckers hating on him. He tired of motherfuckers, he had on the same clothes he had on, that he didn't know, that he had on at the Max B luncheon. So I'm like, oh, this nigga really is live. So, he's screaming and hollering. And then he goes into his neighborhood where he from. He goes to Bronx River. He's screaming, telling niggas, I'm tired of motherfuckers hating on me. Come outside, come fight me, kill me, I'm ready to die. He's screaming, hollering, right? So I'm like, what the? So I'm looking the whole time. And he's screaming, he's at Bronx River. Sato, Platinum, and Flame, yo. I was like, that's not too far from here. So, that's when I took the gun, I passed it to Flame. I'm like, yo, we're gonna go pay this nigga a visit. Platinum, like, you serious? Cause Platinum's in the passenger seat. I'm like, yeah, I'm dead serious. So I'm racing to get to Bronx River, you know what I mean? So I'm looking at the phone and driving at the same time, you know what I mean? So he's still screaming, so by this time the sun is starting to come up. It was dark, but now it's turning in, the sun is rising, so it's getting a little light outside, but I don't give a fuck, cause this nigga, was being disrespectful, so we pulling up, we getting closer and closer to the Bronx. This nigga's still live, screaming, howling, on his live about fuck everybody. You know what I mean? Y'all niggas is pussy, he's screaming in the middle of his projects in Bronx River. Somebody started throwing bottles at him. Throwing bottles, and I'm looking up. So Platinum's looking at he's like, yo, what the fuck going on? So I'm like, I'm just laughing on my way there. Flame, he quiet in the back, holding the gun. So I'm like, yeah, this is perfect. So, so they throwing bottles, he's screaming. So then, as we got closer to Bronx River, I turned everything down to see. I'm like, damn, where this nigga at? So I'm riding around slow through Bronx River. And then we hear some screaming. Platinum was like, yo, it sounds like it's coming from over there. So as we driving up, we see him, he's right there. I'm like, oh shit. So I'm like, yo, Flame, you ready? So Flame cocks the gun, he's like, yeah. So I pull up slow. And all this is on camera, and that's when Hassan's yelling, but then he sees the car pull up. He looked, the window rolled down, Flame lets off, pop, Flame lets off a few shots. I take off, and I stirred off, get the fuck up out of there. You know what I mean? Soon we drive up out of there. I hit my cousin, Shaq Capone, on the phone. I'm like, yo, Shaq. I was like, we on the way to the crib now. We gotta switch cars. My cousin like, what? I'm like, yeah, we gotta switch cars. He was like, yo, it's like fucking 6, 7 in the morning. I was like, yeah, we gotta switch cars, man. He's like, oh, God. I'm like, yeah, we on our way. So, hang up. I'm going to my cousin's house to switch cars. Hassan, we shot at him. He gets it hit in the shoulder. So you see him on live, he hit his man rushing him to the hospital. He's like, yeah, man, this bullet hot, because this is all on live. You're like, yo, this bullet hot, man, hurry up. So Hassan gets to the hospital. He got hit in the shoulder. And, of course, he went live later on, and, he got hit in the shoulder. So, we get to my cousin's house, switch cars, because we was in the Dodge Charger, because I wanted to be low, dipping through New York, but, being that we done got a Hassan in this Charger, I wanted to switch cars, so we took the BMW Jeep, headed back to the Airbnb, and we laid low, you know what I mean? So once it later came on, after, watching everybody vlog about it and talk about it, this nigga Hassan got shot in the shoulder. So I'm like, yo, Flame, how you fire all them shots and only hit this nigga in the shoulder? And the nigga Flame said, yo, I was drunk, man. I'm like, oh, man, you know what I'm saying? So then now, we getting ready to go to the Brooklyn Paramount, with Max B gonna be performing at. So fuck it, you know what I mean? So now, we head out to go to Brooklyn Paramount to see Max B perform. So, of course, when we get there, it's packed, no wall-to-wall. But my cousin, once again, gets us through the line, so we get in there, you know what I mean? So, we strolling around, a whole bunch of, ladies and shit, you know what I mean? Bagging numbers, you know what I mean? I went into my nigga, Majesty, you know what I mean? This is the nigga that runs and co-hosts the Booty Ranch, and the Booty Ranch is where I got the idea from to do the Booty Palace out in Dallas. The Booty Ranch is where they throw like underground parties in different locations with the strippers and the holes and shit like that. So I wanted a Majesty. I'm like, yo, what up, my nigga? Pound hug. He said, yo, I ain't see you in a minute. I was like, yeah, man, I've been out of town, man. You know what I mean? He said, I heard you getting money, baby. I could see it. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what's up with you? He was like, nah, just here to see the show, Max B and shit. But he said, yo, the booty ranch tonight, man, what's up? I'm like, alright, where's it at? He said, Queensbridge. Queensbridge is where Nas from, the projects, Queensbridge houses. So I'm like, word. So I'm like, alright, I'm like, fuck it. I'm like, fuck with it, cause, I'm strapped, I ain't thinking about it. So he gave me the address. I'm like, cool. He was like, yeah, come through, man. He was like, come through the booty ranch tonight. So I'm like, alright, fuck it. So, we enjoyed the show Max B performed. Blase, 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 right? So we went after the Max B performance, me, Platinum, the Flame, we go get something to eat real quick. I'm like, yo, fuck it, yo, let's roll to the booty ranch, you know what I mean? Cause they already knew what the booty ranch, cause I explained it to them. Because we had the booty palace out in Dallas. So fuck it. We head out to Queensbridge and shit, you know what I mean? So we walking through Queensbridge, you know what I mean? It's late, you know what I mean? It's like 2, 3 in the morning, it's late. So we walking through Queensbridge houses. We go into, into one of the buildings. The shit was on the second floor. So, we knock on the door. Of course, Prince opened the door. Prince like, oh shit. I'm like, yeah. Yo, what you doing here, my nigga? I'm like, yeah, Majesty. I seen him at the Max B show. He told me, about the booty ranch tonight. So I figured I'd come through. He was like, oh shit, yeah. So I come in there. We go in. Of course, the apartment is packed, you know what I mean? Cause not only you got a whole bunch of niggas in there smoking, drinking, you got girls walking around, G-strings, thongs, topless, you know what I mean? It's like a strip club in there, but it's in this project apartment because, it's an underwear party. And, with the booty ranch, you gotta be invited by text only. And they switch locations every other night, so that way they won't get busted by the police fight. But, this particular night, we in Queensbridge houses on the second floor, some chick, I guess she wanted to make some extra money, so she allowed them to throw, the booty ranch party at her spot for the night. So, of course we got girls walking around and shit, so, Platinum and Flame, they like kind of bugging like, damn, how they having this underground party in the projects and shit. So, you see niggas getting lap dances, nigga in the corner, getting his dick sucked and shit, one nigga banging the chick out, got her bent over, hitting it on, she's bent over the washing machine in the kitchen getting hit. Other people just standing there smoking, not even paying them no mind. Like, the shit was crazy, you know what I'm saying? It was this one chick in there with a crazy fat ass. I'm like, damn. If I go up to her, I'm kicking my game and shit, hollering. Cause Platinum, he loving it, he vibing to the music, cause they playing that, New York drill shit, so he just bobbing his head and shit. Shit like that, you know what I mean? Flame, he's on point, he quiet, he looking around and shit. So we post up on the wall, we just chilling, you know what I mean? Shit going smooth, you know what I mean? We was there probably for like 25 to 30 minutes, not long. Next thing you know, it's a big knock at the door, you know what I mean? Cause first, somebody looked and said, yo, why all these police running to the building? So that's when I went to the window, I'm seeing police running to the building, I'm like, damn, look like they about to do a raid. I'm like, where the fuck they going? But we ain't think nothing of it. Next thing you know, we hear boom, 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 a bang at the door. So Prince looks through the Pico, he's like, yo, he was like, it's mad police at the door. I'm like, what? So now everybody's panicking. So the cops like open the fucking door. So he kicking the door, boom, 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 he kicking the door, and you just see more cars rush into the building. I'm like, oh shit. So the window was already open because it was hot in there. I said, yo, I said, we only on the second floor. If I see that door open, I'm going out the window. Platinum said, what? I'm like, yeah, we going out this window. So, of course, keep hearing boom, boom. When I seen that door fly open, I started seeing the cops. You know what I mean? Rush in, I said, yo, I'm out. So, I go to the window, I jump down, boom, second floor. It's only on the second floor, wasn't that high up, I jumped down, boom. So now Platinum, he jumps down, boom, this nigga twists his ankle, what the fuck? So I'm helping him up, Flame jumps down, boom. A few other niggas jump down, so I help Platinum up. Flame helped me help Platinum up, so now we walking slow, you know what I mean? Flame, he hobbling, but we rushing him. So a few niggas trying to jump out the window, some niggas got caught, you know what I mean? Cause when I look back, you see the cop pulling one dude back in, you know what I mean? So most of the cops and shit was in the front, or they was already out the car cars and out the trucks. So, we walking real slow. So Platinum like, yo, man, I need to sit down for a minute. I'm like, what? Like, fuck. So, we sit down close. It's like, some benches right there. We sit real close. And we sitting there, and we just seeing people running, scattering. Cops, we hear the commotion from the second floor. We just jumped. So now, if shit's going on, we about to leave. A cop walks up. He's like, yo, he was like, can I help you out, fella, with something? I'm like, nah, officer, we just chilling, We got invited to a party, but, we see all the commotion, 'cause that's the building where the party was at. We figured, we'll wait to see what's going on. They was like, well, that party you're supposed to go to just got raided, so maybe it's a good thing y'all ain't, you fellas ain't there. I'm like, yeah. So he was like, yeah, y'all might want to get from around here, because he said Queensbridge ain't safe. I'm like, you're right. Because, he said, I see y'all got jewelry on and y'all dressed pretty nice. He's like, yeah, this is not the place for y'all. So as we got up, Platinum limping. He was like, what's wrong with your boy's leg? I'm like, basketball injury, this motherfucker think he Kobe Bryant and shit, that's when Flame laughed and I laughed. And Platinum was like, yeah, some motherfucker, hacker shack me, fouled me. Kyle said, man, he was like, maybe you should get that looked at. He was like, yeah. So he was like, you fellas stay safe, man, have a good night. So the cop walks off, and we slowly walk to our car. I take Platinum to Jamaica Hospital, so they could look at his leg and shit, and, he fucked his leg up, like a, sprain and shit, And, we laid low for the rest of, the weekend, and then we head back to Dallas, and that was a crazy time, man. That was a time we, not only went to see Max B and got into, a beef with Hassan and shot at that nigga, but, we almost got raided at a fucking underground brothel in Queensbridge Projects, That was crazy, but, hey, this is my life,